There's a household out there pulling $300,000 a year with a net worth of basically zero. Not because they're reckless, not because they made one catastrophic mistake, because every raise quietly bought a bigger life, and a bigger life keeps nothing. The math behind that is uglier than most high earners will ever sit down and actually run. If you're a man in your mid-30s to mid-40s earning well and still feeling like you're running to stand still, listen up. This isn't a discipline problem. It's an architecture problem, and the architecture has a name. Goldman Sachs surveyed over 5,000 Americans last year on retirement readiness. The U-curve they found is the most counterintuitive data point in personal finance right now. 41% of households earning between $300,000 and $500,000. They say they struggle to make progress on long-term financial goals. That is nearly the same rate as households earning under $50,000. The most financially stable group in the entire survey sits below $300,000. You cross that threshold and the stress comes back. Not because the income isn't enough, because the income triggers a spending response that the income cannot outrun. Goldman calls it directly the phenomenon of luxuries becoming necessities to certain income cohorts. That phrase is doing a lot of work. It is not calling you undisciplined. It is describing a mechanical process. Luxuries become necessities. The upgrade calcifies. The spending line chases the income line and locks onto it. For context on what is normal here, the Federal Reserve Survey Consumer Finances tracks net worth by age group. For households in the 35 to 44 range, the median sits at around $135,000. That is the middle. The mean is $549,000, but the mean is pulled upward by a small number of very wealthy households. Most people in this income band are much closer to Marcus than to Daniel, which is exactly the point. High income and low net worth is the norm, not the exception. That lock is what I call the parallel trap. Two lines moving upward together in lockstep. Income and spending rising in parallel, leaving no space between them where wealth can accumulate. Most people think the goal is to maximize the height of the income line. The parallel trap is the reason that goal pursued alone produces nothing. Wealth does not live in the height. It lives in the gap. Now, if you're wondering why the lines move together so reliably, it is not random. There is a mechanical reason. Every raise above a certain income threshold arrives with a social context. A new peer group. Colleagues who own certain kinds of houses and drive certain kinds of cars. A neighborhood that has invisible consumption norms baked into it. A school that comes with a donation expectation. The spending does not creep in through weakness. It enters through completely rational responses to entirely new social environments. You are not overspending relative to the room you are in. You are matching it. The system is designed to absorb every dollar of income growth before it can become wealth. To show you exactly how the parallel trap works in practice, I want to introduce two people. Marcus and Daniel. Same age, 35. Same income, $300,000 a year. Same city, same general cost of living. They even work in the same industry. The only difference is a single decision each of them made when the money got big. We are going to follow them for 15 years. Then we are going to look at year 30, because that is where the full picture lands. In 2025, Marcus gets the job. $300,000. He has worked for it. He has been grinding through his early 30s, and this is the payoff. So he does what feels right. He upgrades. He and his wife buy the house in the school district. $1 million, 20% down, $800,000 mortgage at 6.5%. He leases 2 cars that fit the neighborhood. He puts his 2 kids in the school down the street. He starts taking the vacations he deferred through his 20s. None of these decisions feel reckless. Each one individually makes complete sense. Together, they have done something to his finances that he will not see clearly for years. Here is what his monthly picture actually looks like. After federal and state taxes, Marcus takes home roughly $15,800 a month. Now watch what happens to it. The mortgage, including property taxes, insurance, and basic maintenance on $1 million home, runs about $6,970 a month. The bar is already nearly halfway spent. 2-car leases add $1,500. The bar just grew. Childcare for 2 kids, $3,500. The bar grew again. Student loan repayment, $1,000. He is now sitting at $12,970 in fixed monthly obligations, out of $15,800. Before groceries, before utilities, before anything unplanned. What is left is $2,830. That is his entire margin. That is every investment dollar, every emergency fund contribution, every flexibility in his financial life. $2,830 a month on a $300,000 income. If Marcus saves all of it, he puts away roughly $34,000 a year, 11% of gross income. It sounds responsible. It is not nothing. But here's the problem he cannot see from inside the system. His lifestyle costs $216,000 a year. Under the standard retirement calculation, he needs that number multiplied by 25 to stop working. That is $5.4 million. At $34,000 a year invested at 7%, it will take him over 30 years to get there. His income is not the constraint. His fixed cost structure is the constraint. If you want to see more of these structural breakdowns, this channel is where we do exactly this. Subscribe to Salary to Strategy so you don't miss the next one. Now let's look at Daniel. Daniel opened the spreadsheet on a Sunday. He sat with it for a long time. The number he kept coming back to was not the house price or the mortgage payment. It was the ratio. Fixed obligations divided by take-home. He ran it 3 ways. Every time it came back the same. He closed the laptop and took the smaller house. Daniel makes the same decision Marcus makes on the house. He buys in a good neighborhood. But when the social pressure starts to appear, the gravity toward the bigger upgrade, he runs a number, not a feeling. A number. He asks himself what his life actually needs to cost to be genuinely comfortable, not impressive to colleagues. Comfortable. He lands at $80,000 a year. He budgets around that, and he caps it. His mortgage is smaller. He drives a reliable used car. His fixed monthly obligations run about $8,000. He puts away $60,000 a year. Same income, $45,000 difference in annual savings. Here's what that $45,000 annual gap looks like over time. Picture 2 lines diverging on a graph. In year 1, the lines are close. Marcus at $34,000 saved, Daniel at $60,000. The gap is $26,000. Manageable looking. By year 5, Marcus has $86,000 in investments. Daniel has $345,000. The lines have pulled visibly apart. The gap between them is $259,000. The line is separating. By year 10, Marcus has $207,000. Daniel has $829,000. The lines are no longer close. The space between them is a different financial life. The gap is $622,000. The distance is accelerating. Compound interest amplifies the gap itself, not just the individual balances. By year 15, Marcus has $377,000. Daniel has $1.5 million. The lines have been moving away from each other the entire time. The gap is $1.1 million. Same income. Same city. Same number of years worked, built entirely out of one spending decision compounded forward. But this is where the second number changes who is free and who is not. It is not the balance. It is the retirement target. Marcus spends $216,000 a year. His retirement target is $5.4 million. He is 7% of the way there at year 15. Daniel spends $80,000 a year. His retirement target is $2 million. He is 75% there at the same age. They are not in the same race. They have the same income and they are chasing entirely different finish lines because the lifestyle determines the finish line. The asymmetry matters here. Marcus can always save more aggressively in the future if his income rises. That is the hope he is running on. But the compound interest math does not wait. Every year that the gap between the two lines stays closed is a year of compounding that Daniel banks and Marcus does not. The caps out math at year 20 is nearly impossible. The engine has been running on Daniel's side for 2 decades. You cannot compress 20 years of compounding into 5. Now here is the second layer that most people miss. And this is where the parallel trap becomes something worse than a savings problem. Marcus is locked in. His fixed obligations run $12,970 a month. That number does not move unless he makes a decision with enormous social and financial cost. Selling the house in the middle of the kids' schooling, breaking leases, renegotiating tuition mid-year. These are not just financial transactions. They are life disruptions with real friction. So he does not make them. He keeps the spend, which means it keeps the income requirement, which means he needs the job. Every morning Marcus wakes up, the mortgage, the leases, and the obligations have already decided he is going to work today. He has no say. His income has been converted from a choice into a structural necessity. This is the second trap built inside the parallel trap. I call it the optionality gap. The gap between what your life costs and what it needs to cost determines how many decisions you can actually make. Marcus cannot tolerate a pay cut. Cannot take a calculated risk on something new. Cannot absorb a bad quarter without catastrophic consequences. Daniel can do all 3. Not because Daniel is braver, because Daniel's lack costs $45,000 a year less to maintain. The optionality gap is the parallel trap's second effect. The first effect is the balance sheet. The second effect is the decision space. Every dollar of unnecessary fixed cost you carry does 2 things. It reduces your savings, and it removes a degree of freedom you will not get back without significant disruption. Measured in time, that gap at year 15 represents roughly 14 additional years of mandatory employment for Marcus. Not because he wants to work 14 more years, because his spending line requires it. 14 years. That is not a number. That is mornings. I want to address the legitimate counter-argument here before we get to the fix, because it is real. The strongest case for Marcus's path is the home itself. After 30 years, his mortgage is paid off. He owns a property that has likely appreciated substantially. His housing costs drops dramatically. And at year 30, his investment account sits at $1.4 million. That is not nothing. But here is what Daniel's year 30 looks like. His portfolio is $5.6 million. He crossed his $2 million retirement target somewhere around year 18 and has been building margin ever since. He has been 65 years old with the option to do exactly what he wants for almost a decade. Marcus at year 30 is at $1.4 million against a $5.4 million target. His paid-off home is real wealth, but it is wealth he cannot spend without selling it. The gap between them at year 30 is $4.2 million, built from nothing except the distance between 2 spending lines. These numbers are before tax drag on investment gains. After long-term capital gains at 15 to 20% on the taxable portion, both numbers are modestly lower. The order of magnitude holds. So what is the actual fix? 3 moves. None of them require selling the house tomorrow. The first move is to run the divergence number. Take your current annual spending, multiply by 25. That is your retirement target under your current lifestyle. Now think honestly about a version of your life that costs $30,000 or $40,000 less per year that you would actually enjoy. Multiply that number by 25. The difference between those 2 targets is your structural freedom number. It tells you exactly how many additional years of work your current spending architecture is costing you. Most people who run this calculation are surprised by how small the lifestyle sacrifice is compared to the time recaptured. The second move is to install the 50% rule on every income increase. With every raise, every bonus, every jump in comp, the default will be to upgrade something. Automate 50% of every net income increase into investments before it reaches your checking account. The other 50% can go anywhere. This is not frugality. It is a governor. It prevents the spending line from tracking the income line automatically. Without a deliberate mechanism, the parallel track closes on its own. The third move is to calculate your fixed obligation ratio. Add up every monthly expense you're legally or contractually obligated to pay regardless of what your month looks like. Mortgage, car payments, insurance, loan minimums, any tuition under contract. Divide that by your monthly take-home pay. Above 50%, you have no margin. A single bad month and you are borrowing to cover basics. Below 40%, you have agency. Below 30%, you have something close to what Daniel has. That ratio tells you more about your real financial health than your salary, your account balance, or your credit score. It tells you how much room you actually have to breathe. The parallel trap is not a character flaw. It is a predictable outcome of high income arriving inside a social environment that is optimized to absorb every dollar of it. The system converts your raises into obligations faster than you can redirect them. The fix is not discipline. It is a structural intervention. A governor on the mechanism. 50% automated. Fixed obligations capped. The gap preserved deliberately before the environment can close. Wealth is not the height of the income line. It is the width of the space between income and spending. That white space is where compounding lives. It is where optionality lives. It is where the ability to say no lies. If you're in your 30s or 40s pulling good numbers and still feeling the treadmill, subscribe to Salary to Strategy. We publish one of these every day. This is exactly the architecture we dig into. Drop your divergence number in the comments. Take your current annual spending, multiply by 25, and write what you get. I want to see what the gap looks like from where you are sitting. I read everyone. I'm thinking.